Boom. Welcome to What's the Future?
Morning,
Brett,
Mike.
how are you?
Amped today. Amped.
It's Monday.
I must admit, I love getting up early, getting ahead of everybody else, getting this video cast in, sharing knowledge. Damn it.
Absolutely. Get going, man. Make it happen. Make shit happen. But we're not just doing random chats. We're doing the 21-day challenge, and it's day 4, Brett.
Yep.
What are we talking about today, bud?
So today is a follow-on from yesterday. Yesterday, what we had a chat about was the importance of doing an assessment in your business and the principles by which you need to govern that assessment, because it really is quite difficult. So I'm going to jump in straight away today and share my screen. And what we're going to do is we're going to understand just some of the detail that's required around doing an assessment. Mike, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen, Brett. I can see, and I'm going to play timekeeper here because we want to keep it under 10 minutes.
Fantastic.
Cool.
So, day 4. I'm just going to spend a bit of time on this cloud discovery framework. So we spend a lot of time between 3 core areas. The first area is technology, then it's people, and then it's process. Seems pretty obvious, but to get all 3 going is incredibly difficult. So now, when you're building an assessment, you need to worry about the following things. The first one is, what are you going to actually assess? And we spend most of our time in the world of hyperscalers, as we keep on saying. We love the hyperscalers. So we do a lot of assessments around pricing comparison and feature comparison. So understanding the requirements of your architecture, your applications, and your data landscapes. This generally takes around about 2 weeks, and it's a full-on questionnaire where one should be interviewing your teams, your network teams, your application teams, your security teams, your infrastructure teams, and along with a single point of contact on your side, just to manage and engage. There's usually about 6 or 7 workshops that happen, and there's a bunch of documentation. The goal there is really to align your cloud strategy. So we can also, a lot of people haven't done a cloud strategy, and that's really important too. And that really helps define the set of requirements. Though that does take a little bit longer. What do you need to be considering in your cloud strategy? Well, you need to be thinking about the future. Well, a lot of people group up cloud strategy into a digital strategy. You need to be thinking about, how are you going to fund this? How are you going to sell it into your business? How is it going to support your current strategy? And after COVID-19, I can tell you what, that's been the biggest driver for any form of digital transformation. So guys, trust me, all of your executives will be looking at some form of digital stroke cloud stroke AI strategy. That's important to get done. Now, doing just a pricing comparison, that's great, awesome. It can get fairly complex, as each of the vendors will come in with different proposals. So we urge you to take the standard pricing on the websites, apply a 1-year commit, and you'll be able to get as close as you can to comparing apples with apples, because they all have different VM configurations. They all have different platform as a services. So it does get quite difficult. The next thing you want to really test is you want to try and narrow from the pricing down to 2 hyperscalers. And you need to now test performance. Guys, everyone says a VM is a VM or a hyperscaler is a hyperscaler. They're not. What we've learned is through every single performance or benchmark that we've done, it varies differently. And we've done lots of performance benchmarks. The one that seems to work every time and have a clear outcome is taking your reporting server. You generally have some big server that probably has 32 cores and 256 gigs of RAM, something ridiculous like that. It costs a fortune. It's continuously running these batch jobs that take 19 hours, or I've seen in some cases 21 days to get certain reports, month-end reports out. Take that environment, take a snap of it, and then move it into each of the 2 hyperscalers that you've narrowed it down to. Exact replica. So my advice is, take a snap, build not such a big machine. You probably only need 4 or 8 cores with 8 gigs of RAM, or even 4 gigs of RAM. Then run the same reports. time and time again, this is what we generally see. If you're running 19 hours on your current servers on these huge SQL databases, what you're seeing in the cloud is a 19-hour can get shrunk down to 3-4 hours to run that same report. You double up the cores and you double up the RAM, you'll see that drop all the way down to about 45 minutes. It is phenomenal. So you've got literally an eighth of a machine performing at literally 1/8 of the, 8 times faster. So it's great. You're able to start then saying, okay, now I understand what my performance is like. I'm able to get a real-time costing or real-life costing on what it would take to process this data. And you get a feeling on the experience of what it's like to set up, the experience of speed. Then what we generally do is if you're in AWS or if you're in Google, we'll then flatten the database and put it into a Redshift or put it into a BigQuery. And then we run the same slightly adapted scripts to be able to work on those databases as services. And that's where you see it drop all the way down to 3-4 seconds. It is phenomenal, but you have to do the steps. You have to start with what you've got on site. Then you've got to start with a massively shrunk machine up in the cloud, double up the RAM, and then go put it onto something like a BigQuery. And it's phenomenal what you see. And you know, we'll go into more depth on those benchmarks tomorrow. I think that's really important to cover that. Then after that, you've got to decide on an architecture. So you spend a bit of time, work through an architecture. You've got your current architecture, your network topography. You've got to rethink that. Your application architecture is probably scattered everywhere. Guys, there are core applications that need to be in the cloud, that need to be all together. You can't have an architecture where you have some of it on site and some of it up in the cloud. You need to take the entire application sets up there. Otherwise, you're going to suffer huge latency bottlenecks. And then finally, after that, you need to get into the planning phase. You want to get all of this done as part of the discovery and the assessment phase. Because if you do the planning, the hyperscalers and the resellers will do that work for you. They'll work out the best plan for your network. They'll go through the necessary data governance and make sure everything is safe and that all the compliance is there and that your governance teams are the happiest puppies on the planet. And then you'll get a clear understanding of the tooling that will be used and what parts of the architecture will be involved in a lift and shift. Then, Mike, the most important part, people. Do you want to go through that?
No, you know what I think we need to do with people is let's bring Grant on tomorrow and let's have a conversation because he's the guy who's had to work quite hard with people.
So very careful. So I think that's what we'll do. We'll get Grant on. Grant is our global accounts director. He really does have a fantastic approach with his teams on managing the people side. So Mike, as you can see, super important to get the assessments taken carefully or done carefully. But it's easy. You have a lot of support doing it. And you're really talking about a month's worth of work. So guys, get cracking.
No, absolutely. And as you say, as we move through this and as the markets modernize and as systems are going to be redefined as we come out of this challenge that we're setting in, these kind of strategies are going to become pretty important just from a compliance point of view, from a cost point of view, and these benchmarks and assessments are critical to go and sell the solution internally. And we see that time and time again. When it's not done, it becomes very complicated to get stuff moving internally. When it is done, the process is a lot smoother.
Make your decisions with data, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Brett, let's wrap it up there. Keep it under 10 minutes, nice and tight. So thank you once again for sharing and let's catch up on this with Grant tomorrow.
Awesome. Chat to you then.
Cheers, man.